All right, welcome back to SMAF TV. I am the president of the Saber Martial Arts Foundation, Alan Venable. Joining me today is the Emperor Penguin, Luke Richardson, my main man, Fode, from the Starbecue podcast, and our two distinguished guests who are going to be fighting on the screen here, Sloan Hood and Matthew for the People Dominguez. We're going to do a little fight breakdown. You guys want to give us a little bit of background or what's happening in this?
I completely forgot what happens. So take it away. What happens here?
So basically, this is just a regular spar between Matt and I, and I usually do two-handed, but I'm trying a saber I made recently. That is literally just for one hand. So I'm kind of trying out a different style, kind of maybe sort of cavalry saber type stuff, taking a little bit of a few techniques that I've seen from like Doug Dearman or Kevin or a few other people that are really kind of sabery, like military saber. So this is totally kind of new to me.
This is basically feeling better out, kind of getting warmed up already.
The neutral. I already do remember my saber breaking, so it's gonna be another.
And that was it. So
yeah, thank you for
Excellent fight. Best fight I've seen all day.
Hey, it was efficient.
Join us next week. So, I left that in so that we could kind of get a little bit into.
Matt's using my other saber actually.
Ooh, clean shot.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at, Sloan, I believe. You have a rank in this year?
I'm a Padawan.
Okay. Matthew, I believe you're a knight, right?
Yes, I'm battle proctor actually, and I have to say it with as much egotism, condescending voice every time. There's no other way.
Right. So this is just equal sparring night, I believe.
One of our regular.
Sloan, are you left-handed?
No, I'm kind of ambidextrous. So
okay.
I bat right-handed, saber, tennis, right-handed, but I write left-handed and I eat left-handed. So I kind of just switch sometimes, try to build them both up maybe.
Right, I understand. Yeah.
So this is
that's a nice little exchange.
What I saw earlier, you had
Alan, you're real low volume to me. I don't know about everyone else.
It's definitely not the highest.
I'm trying to not. I'm trying to.
There you go.
There you go.
That was better, whatever that was.
Yeah.
We're looking at a little bit of lateral movement from Matthew, which we heard last time. Doesn't like to do.
This is way after that penguin tournament, so I've been trying to spice that up in my repertoire of moves. One of the things I have a hard time with when fighting with Sloan, which is fun actually, is he does switch up his grips a lot more often than people do normally, and the tricky thing is that he fights completely different on both hands. It finds a way to make it like transition, which is something that's really, really fun about him. A couple of the earlier points, right before like these ones here, a lot of the strikes that he landed on me were just simple, just guard switching and then hitting from the other side. And I didn't really expect it because you would say, okay, normally your hand wouldn't be there, and suddenly it is.
Oh, that's interesting. I noticed that when I switch hands with the one-handed saber, I have trouble because I don't have like twice the length to put I have to like carefully give it to my other hand.
That's interesting that you say that, because similarly but not identically, I have like a lot of trouble with my left wrist because I broke it like, I don't know, 12 years ago or something. And as a result, like I lack a lot of like the same like range of motion. So I noticed that I fight a lot better with my left hand leading on two hands than I do with one hand. When I'm doing one hand, left hand, it's almost like my left hand is like 10 miles per hour slower than my right hand.
Oh,
But
wow.
when I have the left hand up top on a two-handed grip, I fight it much better.
Huh.
It's really, really weird.
Yeah, I find that I feel like more comfortable, or there's some weird comfort in putting it in my left hand. The problem is the strength doesn't last as long, but I feel precise. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
it just gets weak quicker.
That was one of the first things I commented when you started. There was one fight, I think way before this one, where you wanted to try all left-handed, and you can even see right now, but your reflexes are equally as there on the other side, and it's terrifying.
Nice. That's good to know.
Terrifying. I like that.
Yeah, it's a completely different Sloan. It may look visually the same, but the
That
way
was a good point right there.
yeah, the way he approaches it is way different. Oh.
Oh, this is the one where I pop you on the back of the head
Yeah.
Wow.
and flourish afterwards.
You gotta always flex on me.
No,
That
I
was a fun exchange.
yeah, I try to record these so I can learn from them, and that was really the first time I did I feel like obviously a feint that worked. You know, like it really it kind of. I was looking at this the other day, thinking like you should do that more.
I'm so glad you said I record these so that I can learn from them, because I record so many hours of footage when I have my students. Obviously, the last few months it's been tough, but I record so many hours of footage in the dojo, all sorts of different weapons and sometimes unarmed and whatever, just to like both my students and myself see where I'm going wrong, where I'm going right, and it's so nice to hear people say that. I feel like not enough people want to watch themselves, and as a result, they don't film themselves because they don't want to watch themselves. Yeah. But you got to get over that. You got to just like kind of bite your tongue as you watch yourself fight, right? Or make fun of yourself incessantly until you get so comfortable watching yourself that now you can learn from it. Because it's the same as like singers who say, "Oh, I hate listening to myself sing." Well, you know, maybe listen to yourself sing more often, and you'll just get used to it.
Yeah.
And then you can come at it from a different perspective.
All right, this is where we kill these two.
Who's this now?
Cut the camera.
Interrupted one take. No, it's fine, dude.
Who do we have in this fight?
I think that was Joe, and I forget the other guy's name.
Steel,
I don't
something
know.
like that. I recognize him. Oh my god, I hate this. It's so unfair. Does that even count?
Yeah.
He caught you sleeping.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess it does count.
And
My goodness.
John taught me that kind of. He's like,
John does it all the
instead
time.
of bashing that, just slide.
Love it.
Because it ends in the hand.
It's
Yeah,
a great strike. That was nice too.
Yeah, that was good.
John pulls it off a lot during practices because the time of reset and like when the points strike and when we're actually starting is so like there's a lot of ambiguity compared to a tournament. Everyone's like, okay, go.
This one was so weird. I've looked at that point so many times and I can't figure out. I think I got it because I kind of remember it, but I can't figure out. There's a frame where my blade is like down, and then the next frame it's like the other direction and off somewhere. It's real weird.
Glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
We deleted your.
Look at that fancy footwork. What are you, Michael Jackson, James Brown?
No, Eddie Gordo.
So, Sloan, what forms are you expanding in? Because last time I saw you, you were pretty much in Form 1 exclusively. Are you still sticking with Form 1 exclusively?
I think so. I mean, like, John, who's my teacher, you know, we haven't really discussed, like, anything in particular, just kind of going off of what I've, I guess, developed over the last year or so. So,
Right.
I guess I tend to be pretty. This fight isn't a good example, but usually two-handed, and usually I like to be pretty blade bashy, which my understanding is that's kind of Jim So. But no, I haven't really, other than what we're watching right here, I haven't really tried to adopt anything other than sort of a very kind of Kenjutsu Kendo style, you know, very linear, straightforward type stuff. Although Matt spins me around and we change position all the time, and it's awesome.
This is an interesting fight.
What I really enjoy about this is that we acknowledge and exchange. Acknowledge and exchange. Acknowledge and exchange.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
There's honor and going, yep, I got hit. Honor and going, I think I hit you. Okay, cool. And then moving
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about continuous sparring, and people seem to think that's like a feature. I don't know. We continuous spar all the time. I think it's the best way to do it in training because it, like, if you're forced to call your own points, then you're forced to back away, like you're saying, acknowledge. Like, there's a lot of humility, but also confidence in knowing who gets what point when and agreeing upon it.
Yeah. Oh, that was a John strike right there. The little twirl
Yeah.
over the top. Yeah, actually, like I said, I recorded a lot of these fights, so this isn't my best job, but most of the time, for my own benefit, I usually try to overtly tap where I got hit, so that I can see.
Right, that's what we try to do as well.
Yeah, so when I watch it. This one I don't do it as much.
It's fun though, because sometimes you'll be like, oh really, I got you there? I thought I got you here. And they'll be like, interesting, because Eric and I talk about this a lot, and all of us, in that each part of the body sounds a little bit different when it's hit.
Yeah.
And obviously it sounds much different than a blade being hit or a hilt being hit.
Right.
So,
which is why I'm going to develop gloves that have, I was going to say metal on them, so it sounds like hilt, but that counts. But the idea of like making your hilt sound like a glove, actually none of that even matters, so never mind.
Depends on your rule set.
Right. Yeah, I guess if it was TSL, I could put some metal on my glove.
Yeah.
When you're listening, you're like, oh, that was Suba. It's fine.
Oh man, don't open up that can of worm.
I know.
Oh Jesus.
oh, what?
Look at that lunge.
was
That was
that?
pretty.
Yeah, I don't know
That
Do it
was
again.
pretty.
who that
Do it
was.
again.
So, I was gonna say it looks like
Woo,
Matthew.
there it is.
Yeah.
That was another solid hit
Got him.
right there. Look
Yeah.
at that.
Wow.
Yeah. I think is that
That
where
was
I'm like, yeah.
It looks like Matthew's trying to gain ground more often than not, and that you're trying to hold ground more often than not, which is kind of interesting because I tend to try and I feel like I tend to try and gain ground a little bit more often, but I get forced into holding ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually, that's something I really need to work on, which is like I still fight out here, like far out, and I'm not good yet at like pushing into someone else's space. And I think I need to do that more. So yeah, I've been told before that like I don't. It's not that I don't move, but that I think, like you said, I kind of hold my ground. But I need to.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like Katie Main makes that work for her real well.
Mm-hmm.
She can hold ground with some of the best, and even Doug too. Like you mentioned, Doug, and he can gain ground because he's so long.
He
but
just takes these long steps. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but because of that, you can't gain ground on him.
Yeah. It's just it's literally and figuratively like a barrier that I need to start crossing, and that's what part of why I like fighting Matt is because he moves around so much. He kind of puts himself right up close, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking about a lot. Just like
Well, you said
Go for
Form
it.
1 was going to be your focus mainly too, and Form 1 is very good at trying to accomplish that as well. So.
okay, yeah,
Oh.
clean hit.
So I think we'll watch it a few times. We'll probably see something different every time we do this.
Who's got the video file? Is that Alan?
Yeah.
Alan, is there any way you can mute that file to us?
So
I think that's why we're having a little trouble hearing you.
that's muted as well. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm still having trouble hearing you.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Free advertising for Zoom there.
There you go.
Little
There you
stuff.
go.
hop and a skip.
Did
Go
I,
over the blade.
I can't. Yeah, did I get one or both of those?
I remember that one. The first one, you whiffed it, and it was also faint for me. And then I went over your blade and went up your chest.
Okay. Ooh, look at that weak
Man.
arm. You just beat down.
So, Sloan, I want to ask. It's very clear that I've switched styles like 27 times throughout this fight.
Oh, is it?
But I want to ask, how are your approaches per each one or each engagement? Like right now, like what was going through your mind, like specifically when I would do two-handed, or when I started letting go and being a lot more like loose about it, or when I started getting more rigid.
To be honest, I don't really know.
That's
Which
good.
obviously presents a learning opportunity. I actually say it in the end when we walk off here that I found myself being more reactive, and I'm usually more proactive. Like I'll start, whacking on your blade, and I don't like to sort of stand still or like do the
Right.
like, the mind game type thing like John
Right.
used to do. But I'm not
Ooh.
noticing that stuff, which I'm just trying to especially since I'm trying something new with this one-handed style.
Right.
I'm basically just trying to keep it fluid, I guess.
That's a challenge that goes through my mind when I'm doing something new, is the fact that it's something new, like trying not to think about that, right? Because that'll be a crutch if you let it be a crutch. So I don't know, I feel like you're like you said, it's something new. I would have thought that you would have practiced it a few times before this based on the way you're moving in the video. So in other words, it doesn't look like it's brand new to you. That being said, it doesn't need to be brand new to sort of hang you up mentally, or maybe sometimes like people like Matthew said, I changed styles 27 times. Some people really do just like jump between different things. I know Alan likes to do that even in competition when everything's at stake. And both ways could be either a mental hang up or a mental advantage, depending on how you feel about it, right? Like, are you going to get mad at yourself for every time you get a point scored on you while you're trying something new? Or are you just going to be like, all right, well, maybe I won't try that again?
Yeah. It's a little like at this. So the any prior knowledge that I look like or experience I have is basically YouTube swordsman, watching a lot of Academy of Historical Fencing. Actually, the thing is, like, I could find countless videos on like half hanging guard, full hanging guard, and the 6-cut drills and everything for like short sword, back sword, side sword, all that, saber and some of that. What I can never find is actual Kenjutsu sparring. It doesn't seem to exist, and I would love to see an actual how it works, besides Kendo, of course. So a lot of this I do kind of wave it, or I go to practice two-handed Kendo style Shicho. Yeah, that was a good one. But then a lot of times when I'm home, I'll pick this up instinctively and start doing one, two, doing that drill.
Right.
So there's like a little bit of pre-practice to this, maybe a smidge.
Sure.
But yeah.
It's like a day and age where you almost have to learn what you want to learn from where you want to learn it, whether that's YouTube or going to a number of different martial arts schools or whatever. But I mean, you mentioned Academy of Historical Fencing, like they're for sure one of the best ones out there if you're going to be a virtual like black belt, so to speak, right? Like if you're going to get your martial arts information from YouTube, they're not a bad channel to get your martial arts information from.
Yeah.
But likewise, a lot of teachers, especially now, there's like really, really talented teachers like John Hackelman, who trained Chuck Liddell. He does a bunch of stuff on his Instagram all the time, and it's stuff that if anybody has any sort of punching target or whatever, like you can do this stuff and learn it from a real teacher without having to go to their real school necessarily. That doesn't make you a black belt, and that's like in truth, but it like sure makes you a student. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could take that information however you need to.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly. They're going to present it to you whether you want it or not.
Right,
and if
right.
you find it, it's sort of your duty to judge it however you see fit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And I've definitely weeded out a few like
interrupts his one
that's
take.
not good, or or I don't like that, or or I'm not. A lot of it's not so much that I'm dealing like I'm finding crackpot sort of teachers, but I'm just like I'm not seeing what I'm kind of wanting to see here, or what I want to learn. If that like I said about not finding kenjutsu sparring,
Right.
it doesn't exist in the world.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
do have. Are you familiar with the term bunkai?
No.
It's like application of a kata or application of like a choreographed set or whatever.
I think I've seen that
application-
then.
Okay, so they do have like quote unquote sparring, right? Where the teacher and maybe like a lower level teacher, right, will go sort of medium speed with probably sharp swords because those people are so intense. And it's not exactly sparring like you're saying, right? But it is like very like twitch decision making processes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I've definitely seen that. I've seen it's usually like one or two moves. Like one guy will come in and then he'll sort of
Generally
block five,
speaking,
strike
yeah.
hit, and they'll
Especially
freeze.
depending on whichever martial art with the sword you're looking at, if it's kenjutsu specifically or Iaido specifically or this or that, right?
Right.
Yeah, those are always really fun to do once you know them. Because it shows you both power and control.
Yep.
So maybe we work on a SMA version.
That would be so fun. Like, yeah, we shouldn't say anymore. You know how the trolls be.
I don't know how many times we've brainstormed something on one of these videos, and all of a sudden somebody else is doing it. But,
Wait, yeah, that looks familiar. Down to the letter. Oh man,
I like your little hop.
Emperor Penguin.
Right.
What do you think of this man's
Yeah,
footwork?
hi.
Oh no.
I like watching the fight a lot.
Which man?
His footwork isn't bad at all. It's actually really good. He's not necessarily mirroring, but he's following Matthew's pace pretty
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
He's a little bit. There's a little bit of hesitation in his steps and a little bit of like unsurety, but that's probably because he's trying stuff out and he's switching up his hands. When you switch right and left up a lot, it's your brain can get confused in itself. So it's understandable. Like all in all, 9.5 out of 10, pretty good.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
I do have to say, last time I fought you, Sloan, this is a different fighter.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think about that fight a lot because it was fun, but also it was just hard.
Hard.
Those are the best fights. I love when I get my ass whooped. It's like the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
Not like in a painful, embarrassing way, but in a way that like, oh, nice. Somebody's got me down to the wire again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you can get somebody to switch up the way they fight, or just try something new, that's always a really good time.
Right.
If you have
I
Oh,
love it.
look at that lunge.
So pretty.
Like, I think you went like 20 feet, dude.
Small disengage for flavor.
Here comes
And
that.
again,
Fails this time, but that's okay.
Beautiful flesh. Beautiful. Oh my god.
did Sloan get that point there?
He did.
Yeah, it looked like
Yes, very nice.
Oh.
Good disarm.
I was practicing trying to flunge at an angle instead of just straight in. So
Right.
do some like body evasions, but Sloan had like the perfect answer to the problem, so it's like, okay, well, no matter what, I'll lose.
Yeah, that was a brilliant little wrist cut there.
Mhm. Those rising cuts Sloan usually pulls off on me are when he does it, it's like 90% the correct action at the moment, and so I just walk away a little sad. I go, okay,
Sloan, how
yes,
tall are you?
Ooh.
I like that. That was
Yeah.
really good dash there.
Sloan, how tall are you?
5'10".
5'10"?
Too tall.
I know, right?
Too tall.
Or what height?
There it is.
Are you guys at the same height?
Yep.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
I'm also
Yeah.
5'10".
Gotcha.
I was gonna say, like, who's wearing the taller shoes then?
The thing is, Sloan is objectively longer as a person. Like his limbs are longer.
His reach.
Oh.
Um,
Oh. Okay.
you are longer. As like a person.
Yeah, so I've been told.
Hey, don't let it get to your head, kid. I love you, son.
That's a super fun fight. Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah. No, it's always that way with Matt. I have other videos of Matt and I too, and they're always interesting, always cool.
Weird out of context.
Play of this, so we can kind of see if there's anything more that we can say as far as like what could we actually improve upon, see more of in the community, not necessarily just this fight.
Right.
What are some questions?
Sparring video to see.
Have a working saber. That's one of them.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Keep your batteries charged. All right.
Yeah. It's not even my saber. That's what sucks even more. I was borrowing someone else's before.
Yeah, and now you're borrowing mine. You're borrowing
Yeah.
my main.
Your main, yeah.
Is
I'll
this
break
the
it,
most
dude.
recent time you guys fought?
No,
no,
there's a lot more. Like after this point.
I started. So I was recording these around December before Christmas. So there's a several week span where I'm recording a bunch.
Okay.
But there's another one with me where it's like 30 minutes, but John's also coaching me the whole time. And there's a point at which like I can't touch Matt, and he's literally just like pop, 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 and John's like sitting there going, "He's got you dialed in. You're in trouble." And I'm behind my mask. I'm like sitting there going, like I'm getting kind of annoyed. But there's a lot of good stuff in that one too.
Who got that point just there?
My tip went up his hand or in his palm, and I rolled the saber upwards there.
Is that the
Ooh,
one where I'm
nice.
like whiff?
Yeah,
Did I get,
yeah.
And I missed. Did I whiff twice when I came down?
Yeah.
Okay.
My blade went on top of yours and then scooted up in.
Gotcha.
It's not often that like you three, and by you three I mean like Nick, Alan, and Code, watch like SDS practices. It's such a different animal compared to like tournament us. Very
It
interesting
always
stuff
is.
comes up.
I would say that's probably true of all of our different groups.
That's true,
probably,
yeah.
Like,
Mm.
I don't want to say more intense during practice, but everybody's objective is to improve, right?
Of course,
Like nobody
of course.
goes into practice going, "I think I'm going to suck more after tonight." You know, like
Yeah.
that's not your objective.
Maybe for like 5 minutes, and then you start connecting the dots and go, "Oh my god, I should have
Right.
blocked."
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's important for people to hear you say, like, that it's a different bear altogether. And tournament, there's like a certain level of excitement, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I find that a lot of creative stuff comes out in practice because people are like, you fight each other all the time. You want to surprise each other, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Whereas in a tournament, you want to stick with the things that are working for you and change it up when it stops working for you.
Yeah. I still get. I've only been in like 2 tournaments. It was the Palm Desert one, and then the May the 4th, and even our inter-school tournaments. Like I still get real nervy, real jittery. I look forward to the day when like I'm less, that I'm more comfortable in it. Because like I fought Doug first round in May the 4th, and I did well, but I think we were both. You could see it in even some of the veteran people. Matt will sometimes say, he goes, "I'm nervous as hell, man." I've seen even John. Like John is obviously awesome, but I've seen him be nervous in his fights sometimes too. And you just sometimes,
Yeah, sure.
You keep practicing, but I think it's important to like, if you can, practice competitively as much as possible.
Correct.
So there are
Correct.
stakes involved.
Correct.
So it's good to try stuff like Matt and I are doing here, but it's also important to be like, hey, how are you when it actually matters? And you have
Right.
5 points, literally no time to,
That's how you do it, boys.
That's how you do it.
I love
bro.
how you said stakes, because like some people, and you know what, if this is your way of doing it, like I guess that's fine, but like I think all of our groups generally try to treat it as much like a lifesaver as we can on Earth, right? And
Oh yeah.
when you stop counting things like thrusts, or stop counting things like hand shots, or stop counting things like leg shots, like you start to diminish the level of not just creativity, but those moments where the stakes are raised, those moments where you can learn from how high the chips are stacked, and force yourself to go all in a lot.
Yeah.
Right. Well, when you're in a practice, you're a little bit more relaxed, especially since there's usually no point limit, right? Like,
Yeah, I shouldn't say there's more stakes or less stakes. Maybe there's different stakes at hand, right?
Yeah. What Sloan is saying, sometimes you just have 5 points. You have no time whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, you can't mess with it.
Yeah.
And you're too nervous to, really, unless you're really, really experienced, where you're like, I got 5 points, I might go home after this, but I'm going to try something new. I'm like, no way.
Yeah, but experience, man, when you see that person across the corner that you know is really good, and you're like, well, it doesn't matter how experienced you are, anybody who's really good has a high probability of being able to beat you. And how bad do you want to not get beaten, right?
Right.
That'll make anybody jitter if they really see someone across from them that they know can get some solid points on them quickly.
Yep.
I need to move my shoulders a lot more now that I'm watching this.
What'd you say about your shoulders?
I need to move them a lot more.
How do you
They're
mean?
by move I mean like incorporating them when it comes to my strikes. I'm too rigid on my upper torso. That's part of the reason why I'm like trying to move away from just strictly fencing at this point in my career with Sabers, because I noticed that when I start more recently actually, when I start doing weight calf, which is like, with scramble sticks and all that good jazz, I'm very rigid, and in a form where that should not be a thing. It's very detrimental. And so I don't know, it's something I have to put back in my repertoire. And I'm noticing it now too, because this two-handed stuff is to practice my Shicho in a sense. But even then, well,
I love it.
Even then, it's like all my strikes still come from like the same like torso pattern. It's my arms doing 90% of the work, and I'm watching these videos. It's like, maybe I know in the moment of this fight I was trying to not do that, but I'm learning that I should not remember to do that. I still have not learned.
You're talking about like getting more rotation.
Yeah, more upper torso, because it's really limiting how fast a lot of my parries can come in, especially like right there. And when you got to the back of my head too, it's like the move to respond to you was right, and it was a very valid answer. But because my torso was so rigid, it wasn't able to block you in time or fast enough. And that's not me saying you struck the wrong strike. It's you struck the right strike. It's just that if I were to react to it, I would have been dead yesterday. It's just I'm too slow physically.
Well, that's the beauty of seeing your fights over and over again.
Right.
You have a different thought process, in the third person than in the first person.
Right.
And right now, you can take a step back, and you're not breathing hard. You're not, tired first. There's no pain just watching. So it's a lot easier to sports cast, I guess, your own head.
Yeah.
So, well, that was stupid. Yeah, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Excuse me.
So that's actually a very healthy fights. Like I said, I love those little pop there that just close the gap. And able to see this in the first person, your own mask, kind of seeing that happen is a completely different experience than watching it a little bit later.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's something that like I think everyone should do if you have any footage of yourself. I know a lot of people, especially those who are quote unquote ranked in certain places, are really upset at like video of themselves because they feel like their secrets are being kind of like leaked out into the world. You know what I mean? With people to study. But in my opinion, I think that
What?
yeah,
I feel like you have to be a certain level.
What?
Of
it's a thing. No, because like
that's
it's a thing.
crazy.
I'm not gonna say
Oh,
who
man.
and I'm not gonna say where, but I'll give an example. Like, you know, in fighting games, right? People say like, oh, there's so much data of me out in the world, like how I perform, how I fight when I'm in super serious mode. And one of the theories that I've like, you know, from competitive fighting games and also agree on is that when you become competitive, this is a little trick to anyone who's listening. It's my opinion that once someone is in their competitive nature, they tend to do a lot of bread and butter combos, things that they're so reliant on, things that they know will work, things that define like Alan Venable. You know the people that define like Matthew Dominguez. And so as more time goes on, and as more footage of you goes out, people will start to pick apart these essential patterns that you tend to do, and people are afraid of that. But it's in my opinion that you shouldn't be, because that's how you grow. Like if you're too stuck on your one-trick pony and someone dismantles it, you never know when someone comes out of nowhere and wins all of ULF tournaments. Who said that out loud? Whoops. I didn't say that.
I mean, the UFC would not exist if people didn't film people's fights and somebody was like, okay, that person's dope enough to fight that person. Then we get this sick fight that everybody pays lots and lots of money to see. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be just UFC, even just amateur Muay Thai or whatever. Like when people don't want to be filmed in that way, what they're really doing is like we said earlier, stifling their own ability to like progress.
I agree. I agree.
How would you not want somebody to like? I could understand if you really got your ass whooped and you were embarrassed by it. Like you don't want somebody interviewing you on what went wrong right after the fight, right? But maybe like a week later, you can watch that fight and go, shit, maybe I did this too early, or maybe I've been doing this too often.
Right.
And you can start to learn from it when your head descrambles.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know.
And you know,
I feel like it's a real ego thing if you don't want to be filmed.
It is,
fighting.
and it's like, you know, no martial arts is perfect, right? There's always going to be holes in some degree somewhere. So and as you grow as a fighter, like you should be able to adapt yourself and fix those holes on the fly.
I love that.
And you can't do that if you don't know what's wrong. Like if you're constantly throwing stabs and you're winning all the time, right? One of these days, someone faster at you at parrying is just gonna block you every time, and you'll never know why you're losing. And I've met
you never
like
practice for that problem because you never had that problem before.
And it's the thing is the part that sucks is that it's discouraged a lot of people that I've met over the years, because they go, wow, I'm terrible, I suck, I can't get good. And I go, well, it's not that, it's just you're relying on this one single thing, and then once someone out there in the world, which will happen, will beat you at that one single thing, you don't know what to do about it. Like it's gonna put you back at level 1. And so it's just growing from that. It's the important part, and you can only do that if one, you first of all humble yourself and recognize that you're doing something wrong.
No tree ever grew without a little trimming, right? So you have to be knocked back down a level or two once in a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And of course, watching your fights is easy. It's really easy. You know,
it's so important, dude. Even just like, you know, you were talking about like watching tapes of UFC, but like obviously, you know, the NFL.
That's a ULF actually, but UFC too.
Yeah. But like,
that's actually what I said. But UFC works.
That
too.
explains something.
Yeah.
But like,
that's funny.
Doing your research, I think, is part of it. The funny thing is, like, before that May the 4th thing, I asked Doug to spar it, and he's like, "Nope."
Yep.
I was like, "Come on, man!" And he's like, "No," and I was just like, because I've only sparred him like twice. It's fine. Like, I get that too, because I'm kind of competitive. But watching yourself, like, also just if you've never seen yourself, your form might be like, even on just the most bare minimum, your form might look goofy as hell. You might see yourself and go, you know what? that looks horrifying. I'm gonna, you know, I'm standing there with like my feet together or something like that. And I'm like, I thought it was cool. I win points from time to time. I feed a few people, and you're like, but then you see it, you're like, you know what? I kind of want to improve my form or something like that. Like I did it. I have a couple of tapes. It really ages you. A couple of.
We call them tapes. We call them tapes.
Right?
Call them tapes. I call them tapes.
We can call them tapes.
A couple of pieces of
tapes.
content.
Tapes.
A couple of VHSs of a couple of reels of John and I fighting, and he's got really amazing footwork, and he's trying to teach me a lot of it. But like, one thing I noticed is that like, and it kind of comes through in this fight, is that like I thought, because I have a tennis background, so I'm no stranger to like being low and kind of in a ready stance, but I noticed that like John is even lower and wider, and he doesn't look like he is. But when I try to do his stance right now, I'm like, wow, that's different. Fortunately, we had a pandemic and I haven't put it to use, but like in watching myself and watching others, I'm like, okay, this is how I should stand, or at least I think I should. Right. And it's important to be able to see it from, you know, the outside perspective, or else you're just going to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's
got to try it too.
You know, stifling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately.
There is like a certain point though, right, where you're like, well, I don't want this dude to see me.
I was about to say
that. Like you said about Doug.
There's a small asterisk.
Before he wouldn't fight you. He does. Yeah, exactly. This is the footnote, right?
The footnote. It's like it in a competitive setting. That's a different story. Like,
right. There's got to be like a certain amount of time where you cut the tape and you say, okay, nobody gets to watch anything except my coaches.
That's game day, right? That's that's different story. But
exactly.
I feel like that at that point, you're at a level of competition that I'm not sure exists yet in the Saber community, at least in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I know the behavior.
Oh, it's out there, man.
I'm saying, no, I know. I'm saying my opinion is maybe
I know what you mean.
Professional level something else, but not our, you know.
Yeah, we don't have that
our
level
glow
of
stick.
Actual competition.
Yeah, I mean, people who are really competitive, but it's like if you're like you can't.
There's
see
no like
this.
George St. Pierre versus whoever you want to put George St. Pierre up against. He fought Captain America. Who cares?
People like me. Listen. People like me. You know, over time you figure out some tech. You don't wanna show out some tech, right? It's the secret. You know, it's some secret tech. And then you pull it out.
Imagine if someone beats that secret tech, now you can create another secret tech.
Well, see, that's
it's all about evolving.
Yeah, exactly, and then that proves the previous point.
Here's the myth around secret techs, right? Here's the whole Kung Fu Panda of the situation.
Right.
Like, there's no real secret techs. Like, they come out of like what you're doing. Like, you'll be like, oh, like I didn't know I knew anything that cool. Right? But like
I've been studying my crane kick last night. Don't worry, I got this.
Right.
It's
like the amount of times you get to premeditate that kind of like they happen for sure, it happens. But the amount of times that it happens, it's not like 20 times a fight. It's like maybe 2 times a fight where you premeditate and you go, it's exactly what I wanted. And it worked exactly how I wanted.
I'll argue against that. It depends, because fighters like me and Adam, we converse a lot. Adam and I, and what we like to do is that we like to really think about the mental space of every opponent that we could possibly fight at the time, and that's kind of what defines what tech will be unshelved for the tournament. You know, it's like if I'm fighting someone like I don't know, like Sloan, and he's gonna go with his like Jim, so parry me and snap me in half, bend me over techniques, right? I'm not gonna do certain strikes, and I'm gonna probably do something maybe new, maybe cool, but you know, but
that's not specifically premeditated an instant before you execute it.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That's
the only like specificity I'll put in there.
Right.
I'm talking strictly about like as you're in a fight and he's thrusting, like how many times do you actually go, I need to do this circular parry this way, right? Like you
hopefully
just do
you
it
don't.
And you're like, oh crap, that's the thing that I was practicing.
That's where muscle memory come in and stuff like that.
Right,
but what I mean from like and what I meant by secret tech, it's not so much like, oh, this rotational parry is gonna save me today.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I know a lot of I I know very few people in the Saber community actually do that, where they sit down and think, okay, potentially it might be up against luring. So what anti-luring kit can I pull out? And that's kind of what I mean.
Right.
And if it's a new complete technique that you've been developing and in practice over time, then then even more reason for it to be super secret tag. And I think that's the fun
Right,
part.
I understand that. Yeah.
And that comes with experience too. Like I have some muscle memory, but I still am like, I'm gonna try that thing I developed in my room where I go up and then down. It's like, and sometimes I try it and it works. But eventually you gotta it just has to flow, right? And it's something I've thought of a lot since I've been doing this. Is like, I've learned 99% of wherever I'm at now. 99% of that came from spars, not from the classes, because it's just I would just develop my sort of own stuff. Like I started to learn to come back to guard quicker. very basic stuff. But like for me, doing this. That's cool, but it didn't teach the flow and stuff like that, and kind of how to be reactive and counter, but I still definitely have to work on all right, now step it, now counter, go.
Right.
That you're standing there.
So compare and contrast this idea with programming, right? Where you actually are premeditating a thing and then it works.
Yeah.
Where you go into it and you go a split second before it happens, you're like, this guy's going to stab, I'm going to do this move and then this move, and it's going to score right here, and it happens.
Yeah.
It's called programming, right? That's the term for it, but it's really difficult to actually achieve in a fight unless you're way superior to the person and they're not doing the same thing back to you,
and them.
Right. Yeah.
Probably
you got to know their fighting style really well too. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So those moments, those are really fun, and I've been known to get real cheesed out. I'll get scored on 10 times in a row, and then I'll do one time where I program the opponent, and I'll just get so happy I could that could be the only point I get all night, and that's all I care about. But did you see that time when where I wanted to do happened?
Yeah, exactly.
I saw it 10,000 times in my mind before it actually.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
The Last Samurai, where he
in my heart I won. In my heart, I'm
the fight takes place in his head, and then he just goes and does it. I think there's a word for that too.
In Hero,
there probably
they have
being slow,
their mind, and there was only one shot.
Yeah.
That's how I fight against Nick. I always imagine myself hitting him in the shin, and it happens.
And then it happens 7 times in a row.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna happen every single time.
I have footage of that.
So do I. I have a lot. I could probably just make a whole hour-long video of Alan just repeatedly hitting me on the shins.
That's like him. That's like him as a kid in Guard Strike, where I see it and oh my god, he's gonna do that thing where he takes the stance and hit me in the head, right? And just lands it every time.
So go for the shins on Nick. Is that
right?
Yeah. No, write it down.
Yeah. I usually tell people before tournaments if I'm in them, I'm like, go for my legs. They're my weak point.
It's a thing though, especially in saber combat, right? It's whoever hits first, right? Whereas in, let's say, HEMA tournaments or even Kendo tournaments, if I were to hit you in the shin, it's not a killing blow, so I don't get the point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I have to follow.
Or you might get an afterblow point, not like a.
Or their
solid
different locations are weighted.
Yeah.
Right.
So it again depends on the rule set, right? So one of the things about we're talking about training, right? A lot of the stuff that works in sabers might not actually work, with a broadsword or or anything like that. So I think that's what's beautiful about lightsaber combat is it does reward certain things, but again, it does also create certain habits that won't work in other rule sets.
Yeah.
So
big time.
So using, we talked about hilts, right? So having a Suba on there versus having no Suba, that sort of thing. Hitting first versus actually a killing shot. So watch these videos, we're really looking at, okay, what's the technique and what's the thought behind that, and would that actually get a point versus will that
Right.
get, you know?
Mhm.
No, I think about that a lot sometimes, is the rule set. I'm very glad that we basically just treat it as a lightsaber, you know, which means that something 9 times out of 10, a strike of that kind, were it real, is going to one way or another end the fight. Very few are just going to be like these, you know, and they happen sometimes. There's a few in the fight where I'm actually talking to Matt and I'm going, you got my finger like right there.
Yeah,
I might
yeah,
have
yeah.
lived were that real, you know, or just some of those slight nicks. But I feel like there's also something to be said for like, I think it create. You guys have been doing it way longer than me, but I feel like the drawback of that rule set is that at the end of the day, because a lot of times I think about like, what would the Olympic version of this look like? In fact, I think about that a lot
Right.
when I'm designing these. What would an Easton saber or a Wilson or a Louisville Slugger saber, as I'm trying to design units that are look cool, but are also just first and foremost ergonomic, and how, because there's no such thing as a modern sword. Everything is a replica.
Right.
There's no like literally in use today, and I sometimes wonder, just from an art standpoint, like how would these look? But when it comes to like the rule set, I think the one thing that it creates, so at like the Olympic level, right? What we do seems to create you end up having this sort of like, I think the most efficient way to fight is kind of small rotational sort of moves, because all you have to do is just touch that to them anywhere. It's just a
Right.
tag, just a touch. So if you really think about like the epitome of winning at this, it ends up being just this very small, at least what I think, very tiny movement, you know, little touches. And I think there's something to be said sometimes for like, hey, you know, the head is 3 points or something like that. It's like, well, then you're going to see some fights where people are just going to like, you know, go for it,
Yeah.
or have a need to do a backswing or take it farther, you know.
Right.
So, anyway, just stuff I think about sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I actually don't dislike weighting points necessarily. I think as a judge, sometimes it gets a little tricky. But I do think about like, well, if you hit me in the knuckle, I'm going to be pissed off for the rest of the fight. But it only takes me half a second of being pissed off for you to see I'm pissed off about my hand, drop my lightsaber, and you to cut me in half anyway, right? So that's where it becomes like, well, I guess every time you hit me, I'm pretty much dead. But there is something cool to be said about going for those higher value target zones for normal weapons combat.
Right.
And that's what the way I approach like fighting like Eric or even Doug, who's somebody just so much taller than me. It's like two of me put together. And for Eric, like you pretty much have to hit him in the head or the torso or the arm he's fighting with, right? And so that becomes like a real exercise in, like you're saying, I have to do this technique versus another technique. Whereas usually I might be fighting somebody my own size and I can rely on things like the small rotations or small jabs or so forth and so on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we were to look at it like an Olympic sport, right, it would have to have the spirit of the weapon in it,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time have, it should
Competitive scoring.
just somebody just walking in the room. That's how
Right.
I see it. Like if you were to walk in and you knew nothing about, let's say, football, you should be able to sit down for 2 or 3 minutes and go, "Oh, okay, that's what they're trying to do."
Right.
What?
So how do you feel about kendo then?
So kendo is actually one of the styles I teach and participate in, and so but I have a very old school teacher who's basically like, no, screw that. You know who hit first. I have that weird, thing where it's like we know we hit each other. Just shut up and keep on going. But
Right.
in like traditional kendo, you actually don't get a point if you don't have striking intent. What's
Yeah.
striking intent? Well, it's different for everybody, but it should look like you won the fight.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
which I think makes it hard to. It kind of doesn't pass the test of what you said of being able to look at it for a few minutes and go, okay, I get it. Because I look at it and I understand some of the rules, but I'm still like, I see like a men and a kote like right at the same time, and then like nobody gets a point, or I'll see two hits and they're locked, like they're in a lock, and I get confused. I'm like, are they still going? You know. So
that's true of some of the European sword events too. Like sometimes I watch Swordfish. I don't know if you guys have seen Swordfish. I think it takes place in what is it, Sweden or Poland? I can never remember.
Scandinavian country, I think.
And they're like, sometimes I watch and I'll be like, wait a second, did nobody just get anything cut off there, or did everybody get everything cut off there?
And this didn't want to
because I have no clue what they're doing.
Right.
So that's just in the scoring sense. Like I can understand what I think I see in the fight, but then again you go like, well, you're not there, you don't know what really happened, right?
Yeah.
But that's a tough thing with any form of, like, from school to school or tournament to tournament, the way they're going to score things is really, that's why the argument for 1.1 hit for everything, right, is really sort of valid across the board. You can enter any tournament and do well,
Right.
or do poorly at your own accord.
The easiest.
There's just simplicity to that. Like everyone gets it.
Yeah.
Just make that.
But then you don't get, like, I just had this like video game kid moment where I was like, but what about combos, right?
Bam, 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 bam.
I was like, what if you're in a tournament and some dude disarms by cutting through the wrist and then immediately cuts at the neck? Like, they deserve 4 or 5 points for that move.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I have something to say to that too. Is what is really annoying when it comes to things like that is usually rule sets and tournaments that are, you know, are like that. You start to see metas being developed to the point where it's just downright disgusting sometimes, and you think to yourself, is there anyone gonna, you know, do a proper lunge or like actually show some martial intent? I'm not trying to be super biased or anything, but I've seen some things out there where I question, right, I wouldn't say validity, but kind of what am I watching? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, that's the thing about rule sets that have like targeting, right?
Right.
So more points for different targets is that you start to see a meta. You start to see, like, okay, well, like Sloan was saying, every time you go, if I know the heads were 3 points, I'm just gonna go for the head.
For the head, right.
Right. You're gonna have headhunters on your...
risk going for the head when you're down 3-0. Like,
yeah.
Like,
right.
And I think that could be real cool if, you know, to take those typical 5-point matches and be like 1, 2, and then just be like, okay, now I have to rethink. Can I get 3 rapid fire? No. I'm gonna have to go for a big one. Is he ready? You know, it creates a lot of more interesting stuff sometimes.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, it does work when you trust the people in the tournament.
Yeah.
When you have complete strangers that you're just like, I don't know if this guy's gonna take my head completely off here.
Right.
I wanted to rephrase a little bit what I said, because I do agree with what you're saying. I think what I meant to say was more so like people kind of cheesing things sometimes, and that's totally valid when playing the rule set. But I've noticed that a lot of people who just play for the points struggle a lot eventually when it comes to growing and adapting, usually as time goes on, and a lot of things. And that's kind of what I'm not worried about, but like my main concern when I see individuals like that. And I'm guilty of that too, because in a past organization, their whole score was just first to touch, and, you know, very simple, very straight to the point. We do it too, but it got to the point where all I kept doing was stabbing, and everybody got really upset, and they're just like, well,
ouch,
that's not fair. And I go, what's not fair? All I do is extend my blade and touch your hand. What's not right about that? And, you know, that sounds really cool on paper, but the double-edged sword here is that, you know, now when I start, you know, fighting against people who are experienced, or when I do different rule sets, like when I went to Lightspeed and when I started doing GSL, this is way later, but what I'm trying to say is, had past Matthew gone to these different rules and still tried to play like in that one-minded game of just playing to that rule set or just doing the meta, you will get ruined by somebody who is a lot more adaptable in the mind. And I know that
Right.
that's like no dumb act. Like, oh yeah, you're preaching to the choir. Like the sky is blue. Yeah, I get that. But like, I think people need to realize that even though the rules are one touch, 1.2, and yeah, sometimes you could just extend your blade and hopefully they'll skewer themselves. There, when you start applying a lot of martial technique and a lot of discipline to your learning and a lot of your skill set, a lot of really cool things can blossom. And I think that's why people are turned off by things like Olympic fencing, or turned off by things like I don't know, like a lot of our lightsaber tournaments, because they're like, oh, it's not showy enough. And we're not here to be showy. We're not here to fight like we're beautiful. We're here to fight. And it sucks because it takes away a lot of support from people. They say, oh man, that's so boring to see. And I go, it's not boring to see. Like, a lot of the game's in the mind. But and the more you put martial training into your repertoire, the more you'll get a lot more interesting interactions and interesting engagements with people. I don't know. Where was I going with that?
That's 100% true.
I think that line, there's a range, right? To, like, I guess you could almost simplify it to looking good and fighting,
how
good the fight
fighting
looks
well.
versus how
Right.
well the fight plays. Which brings up, like, what is that, French fencing, and when they made the lightsaber stuff official in France. And
Yeah,
I think the rule is you have to have a backswing, right?
that
Yeah.
shake.
Which
You okay,
I'm
Nick?
like, that's gonna look a lot better.
Salt.
But I think I feel like there's a point, and it's gonna be different from everyone, that the sportification, can I say it? Can I use that? The sportification of your martial art is gonna sort of water it down, and like,
I agree.
I bet their fights are gonna look pretty cool to the outsider, but like, it would suck if I'm sort of overextended and I can't just be like, like that with that, like it
Right.
that rule to me is too harsh, because like, I want to be able to, we want to at least, even from a fun standpoint, experience some level of simulation of combat, and being like, let's, nope, if you were here, and I was like, no, this is a lightsaber. That's Dooku, like, I gotta kill him.
Right.
Oh man,
There's like,
I highly
There's, like,
recommend
this-
that you try those French rules. I have tried them,
Yeah.
Weird.
and me and my group, we did not enjoy them, either reffing or participating in them. We had never been hit so hard in our lives until that arc rule, and that I got bruises from those shin flex boffers, and those are hard to get bruises from.
yeah.
It was brutal.
I tried them once, and let me tell you, I came in open-minded. I was like, hey, maybe it probably isn't that bad, and then I was wrong. I don't know. We're all entitled to our opinions. If someone likes it, it's fine. I won't judge you. It's
I'll
just-
probably get used to
My
it.
opinions that are correct. Anyway,
Here's the thing,
It's
like,
strange.
you've mentioned putting more martial quality into your training, or martial arts training into your training, or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think my train of thought went. I don't know.
And when you start doing things like always backswinging, you're pretty much shitting on martial quality, because, like, you're telegraphing 100% of the time. Well, when do you want to backswing? It's not to say that you never chamber back at your chin, or you never chamber behind your back for a sword strike or whatever. But, like, when do you do that? When they're not able to move faster than you in that moment, right? When you have the time to backswing and go in with power, or go in with extra speed or momentum. And you're not going to do that if you're more experienced. You're going to conserve your energy, be way more economical with your movement, be way more like, especially if it's in a competition, you're like, I don't want to lose this, right? I'm not going to, like, waste my time telegraphing, waste my energy telegraphing, especially out in California. It's, 900 degrees outside. I'm not here to be sweating in the backswing, okay? I'm here to be thrusting through.
I want to show off my
I feel
armpits.
like
That's the last thing I want to show.
I feel like sweating in the backswing needs to be like your next podcast.
Sweating the back.
That's not a terrible idea. Sweating in the backswing.
It's funny you brought that up. The last time I ever practiced like a backswing in a genuine martial technique was when I was practicing bolos, which is, to the viewer, like, basically a giant cleaver. It's just a cleaver, a giant machete, and the scream of martial arts, and the whole technique was like, listen, there's meat in the way, and you got a sharp object.
Right.
Just whack the crap out of it.
Right,
And
right,
it's
right,
like,
right.
okay. Then you apply it to sabers. Like, look, an elegant weapon of light and photon energy. I can't wait to murder children. You know?
I
Like,
can't
wait a
wait.
minute.
Well,
Please
It'll
don't,
present
please
itself once in a while. You'll have like that moment, and
Yeah.
you'll prep real big. You'll whack the opponent's blade out of the way or something.
Some listener out there is
But-
like shaking his head this whole time. They're like, what are these kids talking about? okay. It's okay.
This guy sweats in the backswing.
Noob.
Sweats in the bags.
so yeah, guys, this has been an excellent fight breakdown and topics for maybe talking about maybe the next version or evolution of saber martial arts and saber martial arts sports altogether. But I think we got to do this again. We got to keep on going, and the more fights that we break down, not so subtle hint, Nick, send me videos of your fights.
I'm gonna record some tonight for you, so don't worry. I got you.
And again, if we get different angles, we take a look at the different strikes and different places.
Can I send some in too, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
Okay.
anybody that's watching, listening, I'm, basically just taking my time throughout the week and, checking out this fight, and I'd love to have you on here, and we'll talk about your fight and see if we can break it down and see what you're thinking during that time and what you might think you need to improve on, and maybe something will come out of it. So yeah, definitely reach out. It's really easy to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Blast.
it's really
This is-
weird.
This is a lot of fun, guys. This
Speaking
is
of
really
which-
cool.
Yeah.
What's that?
What's
Alan?
up?
I said, Fode, how do you get a hold of you?
Oh, how do we get a hold of me?
Yeah.
These days, we're in quarantine right now in the Boon to Box Broadcasting Network. but you can find anything that I'm doing definitely at Saber Martial Arts these days, and hopefully after we get back into a little bit more socially proximal, I don't know if that's the right word choice, recording setup, you can find me again at Facebook/StarBarbecuePod. So.
Nick, how do we find you?
Facebook, Penguin Saber Academy. Just shoot me a message,
Sure.
and I'll probably respond. That's it. Very easy to find me.
Nice. Matthew, Sloan.
you,
Go ahead,
What?
Matt.
can find us at San Diego Sabers Facebook
Yeah.
groups. We also have San Diego Sabers.life, which is our brand new website, gorgeous website. Come check it out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Get a hold of me and Sloan. Either one.
Yeah.
Challenge them to a duel.
Yeah.
I'm dying for an opponent, man. I'm dying to fight someone.
Sloan,
So
fight
long.
me. I'm so
So
pumped after
long.
watching these fights.
Yeah.
You never say that about me, Nick.
Okay, look, Matt. One thing at a time here, all right?
Please.
You're gonna go after my shins.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I
Right.
love you, Nick. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Saber Martial
Thank you.
Life. You can find, if you're in Arizona, we'll probably go to you. Who knows? PhoenixSaber.com. Get a hold of me. So have a good one. Keep sabering.
Awesome.